Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Welcome back, everyone. Today's episode is with Evan Kaloudis. This was from Code Block 4. It's currently still live on 21ism. We had some amazing featured artists, and obviously we featured Evan for his work on the Lightning Network. Really enjoyed this one. It was great to have a deep dive into everything that he's building and also get a little bit of a backstory. So if you haven't checked it out, go to 21ism.com now. And thank you to my show sponsors, CoinFloor UK. If anyone's in the UK and looking to stack sats, I suggest you check them out. I'll have a link in the show notes below so you get a discount. And yeah, enjoy the show.
This is it, what? Satoshi's pouring from the sky, stack some chips up. No fear of missing out, I'm about to dip and flip, what? Now pump it up and double up is what we hit, what? This is it, what? Satoshi's pouring from the sky, stack some chips up. No fear of missing out, I'm about to dip and flip, what? Now pump it up and double up is what we hit, what? Satoshi's pouring from the sky. Satoshi's pouring from the sky. Satoshi's pouring from the sky.
Hi Evan, thanks for joining me today. We've had a little bit of discussion just previously because I've had some internet connection problems, as is usual with this podcast. But welcome to 21ism. We are very excited to have you on here. We have been loving what you've been building, and we thought it was just a great opportunity to showcase it and to show the world what you've made. So welcome and thank you for joining me.
Hey, Max. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a privilege and an honor to be here and to be able to talk to your audience. I'm just excited to chat with you.
Cool. And like I said to you off air, Bitcoin Q&A may or may not be joining us. He might jump in halfway through, but he's normally my crutch for the more technical questions. So I'll probably come off sounding like an idiot when we go a little bit more technical. But it's something I've downloaded recently, Zeus LN. Everyone has been banging on about it for ages, but I've only just got my Lightning node set up and running, and actually quite a few of the guys in 21ism run Zeus, and I was like, right, okay, I need to get going with it. And it's very slick. It's very nice. I had some problems setting it up because I'm a fuckwit and I managed to screw anything up that I built, but now it's up and running. It's great. So it would be good to sort of hear how it came about and why you decided to build a wallet. And did you see that there was something missing with other ones, or it's just something you enjoy doing?
Yeah, sure thing. So, first of all, I'm glad to hear you're using and you like it. That's amazing. And, all the feedback and support I've heard from people, it's like, it's been an incredible journey for me. And to be frank, like, all of it is really just icing on the cake, because when I built Zeus, I just built it for myself, to be frank. So I like you, probably, I made my first Lightning node I did the Raspberry Bolt project, and then I later ran the more updated Raspberry Blitz project. Which, for those that don't know, it's the project's built around getting a single board computer in the form of a Raspberry Pi, then connecting like a terabyte or so hard drive or solid state drive to hold the blockchain, and then flashing the software onto a micro SD card so that you can run this all-in-one Bitcoin and Lightning node solution. So I had built this thing, and I decided I'm going to use this node and use it on the mainnet Bitcoin network to actually use and get on the Lightning network. And, I was making connections at home, buying a couple small things. But for me, I just really wasn't satisfied by that desktop experience, because for me, I really saw the main benefit of Lightning is that, you don't have to wait for those block times. It's like really an ideal wallet to be using out and about in the real world. Like, if Bitcoin ever becomes popular and we're checking out stuff at the supermarket, for example, we're not going to be doing on-chain transactions where the cashier's like having to
Wait 10 minutes.
Wait for 10 minutes, make sure you don't double spend it somewhere else and like rob the supermarket. Like, no, it makes a lot of sense in that regard, in that like your transactions are like pretty instantaneous. It's like comparable to a credit card or a debit card being charged, and the fees are tolerable compared to what I believe the on-chain fees are going to look like moving forward. And I think we're starting to see that now as we're going into this bull market. So Zeus, back to why I wanted to make it. So when I started, there weren't a lot of great options. There were a couple other wallets for Android. So I'm primarily an Android user, and there were some that weren't. It was well maintained. The functionality wasn't quite there. They were a little clunky, and at the time, I had actually done a couple contributions to the Zap desktop wallet, which is still a phenomenal desktop wallet. And I had reached out to Jack Mahlers, and I asked him if he had any interest in me making a Android version of the app based on React Native. So a little more background. At the time, I was working at a cybersecurity company, and I had helped build out their interface for their product in React, which is this JavaScript framework that Facebook made. And I wanted to extend my skills in that framework by using like another sub-framework of it called React Native. And React Native lets you write the code once in this framework called React, and then you could publish that app to multiple platforms. So in this case, Android and iOS. And I just talked to Jack briefly about it, and they had decided to go with a native experience, which in some ways is more smooth. And I still wanted to learn this new framework in and out. So I'm like, screw it. I'm going to just do it my own way and build it to, make this wallet that I want to see and use on a daily basis, and to learn this framework. So from there, I just started hacking on it a little bit, throughout my evenings, and doing some more hardcore hacking sessions during the weekends. Usually while listening to some Bitcoin podcast, some Stefan Livera, some TFTC, was really giving me the motivation to get it out the door. And yeah, I was starting to use it regularly, and be checking in on my balances and managing my channels while I was taking like the bus and train into work. And I eventually got to a point where I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. Why not share it with everyone else and see if anyone else gets value out of it? I know it certainly made my life a bit easier. Let me put it out into the world. Maybe people give me feedback. Maybe people will join the project and contribute code. And, I got both. I got a lot of great feedback online regarding, the interface and the user experience. And then I started getting some contributors. So what started as a project that really just supported the L&D implementation of Lightning, which is great, and it's the most popular implementation, and I use it in most cases. But now Zeus has expanded to sort of be like the Swiss Army knife of sorts for the Lightning Network. So you could connect your LND node, you could connect to C Lightning over the Spark and C Lightning REST interfaces. You could connect to an Eclair node. So those are all the major implementations, I would say. And then if you don't have your own node to connect to, you could piggyback on a custodial solution called LND Hub. And LND Hub is what powers the Blue Wallet app, which a lot of people tend to start off with when they're getting onto Lightning. We've got some big disclaimers on there because that sort of falls into the not your keys, not your coin camp. Because if you're not running that instance, they could run away with your coins. So I had to make that really clear in the Zeus app. But I still think it's a really interesting way to interface with, certain servers you might have set up for various purposes using that framework. And you don't even have to use the Blue Wallet Guys server in that regard. You can create your own LND Hub instance and have your mom or your close friends connect to, and they don't have to worry about sort of the more intricate parts of Lightning Network, like liquidity and channel management. So in that regard, it's a pretty cool system.
Yeah, because it's confusing, right? Like it's step by step with this stuff. I think for non-techies and having the options there available is great because they can still presumably get used to using your app and they don't run their own node, but then they can upgrade and decide to do that at a later stage. But at least it gets them sort of exposure to the Lightning Network, even if it's not the perfect setup to start with, because, like I say, it is step by step and these things do take time. And like you mentioned the Raspberry Blitz earlier, we had Rootsol on here as for Code Block 1. Absolutely love the guy, and the Raspberry Blitz is awesome.
It's incredible.
But it took me, I don't know, a week messing around to get it running. Reaching out to Bitcoin Q&A, had all the different problems, and most of it's just completely my fault. But it just shows that these things take time. So somebody in that situation might say, okay, well, I'm going to get this thing set up eventually, but why don't I set it up and have linked to someone else's node or do it through Blue Wallet or something like that until then, so they don't get stuck for those 10 days or a week. So it's good to have the options.
Yeah, the way I like to look at it is that these things, there's layers to it. There's levels to it, actually. And similar to how on-chain Bitcoin in itself has levels, like I would say it's sort of like this. You start off step 1 and you're on level 1 and you just buy the Bitcoin, you acquire it. It's like, oh, I've got some Bitcoin in my exchange account now. Okay, that's great. That's step 1. Step 2 is you've got your own wallet that you have the keys for, and you extract from the exchange to that wallet, right? From there, maybe you have a more secure setup where you go from a phone wallet to like a hardware wallet, or maybe it's even air gapped in like the form of like a cold card or one of these new wallets that are popular. And then after that, you take out the privacy risks of having someone else validate your transactions and you run your own node. So similarly, you could say that, okay, step 1 in Lightning is like you're using a full custodial solution like Blue Wallet or Wallet of Satoshi. Step 2 would be you have a wallet that can let you control your own keys, even if you're not running your own node. So something like a Phoenix or a Breeze, where you're really only trusting them for before the confirmation gets confirmed. So a lot of the trust is removed. And then step 3 would be running your own instance of LND on top of your own full node and connecting with a wallet like Zap or Zeus and having full control of all your channels. But yeah, there are a couple other options in the middle there, but I would say like something like a neutrino soft light wallet where you're still managing the channels but don't have a full node. But yeah, that's more or less the way I like to look at things. And we don't necessarily have to push people to the extreme, getting a Raspberry Blitz all the way, but it's something we should tell people that they should strive for. And we really need to lay on them what the benefits are. And that's just not abundantly clear when you fire open one of these newbie wallets. They benefit by having their users like not exactly know all the ins and outs of stuff. You don't want to overwhelm your user by giving them all this information and telling them all these risks that might scare them off. But it also benefits their having a user base and maybe even eventually having some sort of business model of sorts. So education is like a really important part of this whole thing, I would say.
Yeah, and it's got so much better. It seems sort of month on month, there's more and more material out there, more and more Telegram groups, people willing to spend time to help each other. There's great software coming out. There's more node implementations. There's just so much happening all the time, which gives me a lot of hope, because I do think that more and more people are going to start either having to look for, taking control of their keys, taking control of their lives, especially with what's going on in the world. And there's less and less of a barrier for them to be able to do that. So, the hope for me is that all this stuff over the next couple of years, when people really, really need it, they can go from cuck money to proper self-sovereign Bitcoin money within, I would hope, within a few months. Like it's not impossible. It's not the most difficult thing in the world to do now, and it seems to only get easier. Do you have a view on that? Do you have a thought of how we could possibly do better in the space to help people?
Yeah. In terms of the software that's coming out, we're really, it feels like a golden era to me, just to be able to look back 6 months and see the technology or the products we didn't have. I'd say in last 6 months, like especially, Lightning stuff has really made some nice strides, but like multi-sig wallet software has gone pretty much from 0 to 100, I would say, in the forms of like stuff like Spectre and Spectre and Caravan and all that stuff is being used so much more, and that stuff's going to get even better with Schnorr and Taproot and making it easier to set up multi-sig. So like always more room to iterate on that. But as far as what we can do, even if we're not software developers, we just need to pay it forward, because I'm sure you, like me, I had a pretty intricate Bitcoin journey, and I had a lot of different voices that helped guide me to where I am. And, this isn't an easy thing to wrap your head around. Like Bitcoin is like a very new way of thinking, I would say. Like, and when I was in school, so I went to college in fall of 2010 to 2014, right? And I was studying computer science, and I had also been reading a decent chunk of Austrian economics, and I had heard of Bitcoin in my freshman year, but it didn't really click for me until I got into my junior and senior years. And, for someone who is somewhat versed in econ and computer science to like not get it right away, that says a lot about this thing. And that was then, but like still, like you see people that are like deeply entrenched into these industries of like software engineering and cybersecurity, and and similarly people that are really entrenched in economics, even Austrian economics, which I feel aligns very well with Bitcoin, and they still don't get it. They say it's a Ponzi, it's a scam, other misinformation, like it's going to use up all the world's energy. Well, maybe it will, but it's not going to be doing it in a wasteful manner. It's unsustainable. It can't be used as a currency, the TPS, the throughput's too low. What are miners gonna do when all of them are mined? It's like all these are like very easily answered questions. It's just like it's just like not common knowledge, and I think that goes to really show like how early we are in this thing. Like the fact that we can have major financial publications spreading misinformation about double spends and what the function of block reorgs are. It's like, okay, this is still like the first few innings of a ball game. Like this thing is not even, not even close to terminal velocity where everyone's going to be using it. Like we've sort of gotten to this point in our culture where like people, they've been exposed to the word Bitcoin and like the vague idea of it. Like I was at a party last night and there was this drinking game, and one of the cards was drink if you've ever invested in Bitcoin. And like I see that and I'm like, okay, like we've sort of like cracked into the culture in that regard, and that like stupid drinking games will mention Bitcoin, right? But then I look around the room and it's like just me and one other person out of like a party of like 10 or 12 people that have invested in it, and that says, okay, we're heading in the right direction, right? And people are aware, but very few people have actually made that plunge. And this is all still very, very early days when you think about it. And I think we've got at least 10, probably another 20 years of this thing having to propagate throughout our world. And I think this is like really the perfect time for it to do that. And you see that as in Bitcoin's creation, like looking at its Genesis block, it's like it is a result of what's going on in the world. Like to see the chancellor on the brink of a second bailout for the banks, like in the first Genesis block, like this is a political project, whether people want to admit it or not. And that's not to say like Bitcoin's explicitly like left versus right wing in that regard, but it's a direct response to what's been happening in the world.
It's a reaction, like you say. It was a reaction. If what happened in 2008, it hadn't have happened, if we didn't have the sort of stupidity and corruption that we had, then it probably wouldn't have been necessary. It's a reaction to all of what went on and all of that corruption, and it's only got worse. And like you say, these sort of preconceived ideas about Bitcoin, or that people sort of, they know, they've heard of it, but they really don't have any clue about it, and they'll fall for the stupid FUD that you mentioned. But I think we all do at the beginning. You said before you were like perfectly aligned to understand this stuff. Like you had the sort of specific knowledge you'd need to really wrap your head around it. But as you said, it sort of passed you by. But then that changed. Can you remember what it was that woke you up or opened your eyes? Or was there a certain moment where you were like, oh, fuck, like, this is something big? Like, can you remember what you were previously thinking about it and how it changed?
It's really hard to pinpoint exactly. I feel like it was just an amalgamation of my experiences throughout that college experience. And really, I suppose part of what had happened just prior to that, with like the housing bubble and the bank bailouts, but also the response to that in the form of Occupy Wall Street and going down there and seeing the competing ideas. Seeing socialists really leaning towards more regulations on these entities, and on the counter side, seeing, it's really just a whole plurality of ideas. Remember people holding cardboard Reagan signs and talking about the gold standard, Peter Schiff debating socialists and streaming it to YouTube. But, also the voluntarists going and protesting at the Federal Reserve, which was just 3 blocks away. It's like, why are we protesting in Zuccotti Park when the real creator of these inequalities and the institution that even makes it possible to bail out these banks on the scale that we saw is like 3 blocks away. So like talking to a lot of people there too, but also seeing like the practical applications of it in the form of the Silk Road, and seeing like the kinds of commerce that allowed for there. And then, really what's going to bring most people into this game is the number go up technology, as they call it. That we're going on and seeing the action and being like, okay, so there's something to this. This isn't just like some niche thing that's going to like fluctuate through this price range. Like it's going to keep breaking through to new highs. And I guess it was like the end of that cycle that I just took the plunge myself and made some purchases for myself and started messing around with the thing and really just getting comfortable with making those transactions and sending from the exchange to a personal wallet. I think I was using my Mycelium on an Android at the time, which is great at the time, but totally garbage now. And I think we're going to still see a lot of cycles like that where, software in the space just gets completely obsoleted. Like, probably Zeus will get obsoleted one day, if we don't end up maintaining it as well. But yeah, just the experience of being able to like just send, or firstly to just be able to create an account, right, without anyone's permission, just be able to write these words down and have full control of it. And then furthermore, like without permission, being able to send to like your friend, your roommate, and for them to just have those coins, like it doesn't really hit you the power of it until you find yourself first A, using it, and then like B, like actually using it in like commerce and like making transactions. And then I suppose like lastly is like after making those commercial transactions, like seeing how much that Bitcoin was worth in dollar values today. Like, holy shit, that is the most expensive 6-pack of beer I have ever purchased. You know what I mean? So, people just don't get it until they lived it themselves, really. So I think if you could actually just get your friend to get a wallet for themselves, the rest of the pieces sort of come together.
Yeah, it's a matter of time, isn't it? It's if someone's held some Bitcoin for some time or they've used it, I think generally once you start dipping your toe in, once you start showing a little bit of interest, you don't really ever come back out of this space. I've never seen that. I've never seen someone sort of come in, start to be interested, start to try and wrap their head around it, and then just go, nah, it's not for me. I'm not interested. It's very, very rare because it's like an addiction almost, because it's so different and it's so much further ahead than everything else. It's so much like it gives you so much power, I guess, is the thing.
It is a power.
It's difficult to, it's like, can you imagine now if there was no Bitcoin and you had to just go back to using dollars and fucking about or gold, and like you lost the power that you currently have? It would feel like you'd gone back a couple of centuries.
Yeah, I mean, like even before this, like doing a bank wire transfer, let's say when I had to send to friends, or I guess I had some cases where I had to send people money in Europe, family members and people I worked with on certain projects. Like wire transfers there that were unpleasant, like really unpleasant. But now after using Bitcoin, it's like pulling teeth. Like I don't ever want to do a wire transfer and have to, especially when you have a problem with it and it gets frozen and you got to call up people. It's like, oh, excuse me, sir, can I please have my money? In that regard, it is cuck money. It's not your money at all. And I think in our crazy world, I think it really redefines what property and ownership is. Because the other things that, we claim to say we own, like, I mean, even our biggest purchases, like our homes and our property, like they're susceptible to tax every year. And, Bitcoin doesn't really operate in that same paradigm. I mean, it could eventually be taxed by authorities on that level, and I think it ultimately will, but, it's a much harder thing to enforce when you get down to it. Like, it's really easy to prove that you have some Bitcoins if you so please, right? Even without moving it, you can just take the private key and sign messages, and people can verify that you have control of an address.
Unless you're some stupid Aussie fuck.
Yeah, like a complete sociopath, and you just make your entire living off of deceiving people, and you really don't care how history is going to look back at you. Yeah, like that. But it's really difficult to prove that you don't have access to something, So it really changes the dynamics of, the definitions of what property ownership is. So a lot of people have been talking about this great reset thing, and what's being pushed by the World Economic Forum and the people at Davos. The 2030 initiative, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right?
Happy.
And that's like really goes into some like technocratic dystopian bullshit, in that if you don't own anything, who is going to own everything? But the flip side of that is that you don't really own anything anyway, except for maybe Bitcoin. So you're going to see a lot of these Bitcoiners that become empowered, and they're not going to want to own anything but their Bitcoin. So they will be renting everything. They will be jumping and doing jurisdictional arbitrage to different jurisdictions that are more accommodating for their families, and especially regarding taxes. So there's a bit of irony in that, but just my main takeaway there is, like, you don't really own anything in this crazy world of ours other than Bitcoin anymore, and yourself and your life and the time and how you choose to spend it.
Yeah, it takes a while to get to that point of thinking like that. It's but it's true. Like once it clicks, it is very difficult to think about ownership of anything else. Like, my previous career was property investment, as is what I've done for most of my life. And if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, would you invest in anything else other than property, or would you put anything more than sort of 10% of your wealth in anything else outside of property? I'd have said absolutely fucking no way. I would never consider anything else. This is the best thing possible, and I actually own something. And now I look back at how I used to think, and I think, you fucking idiot. you were so, you were so wrong. But you think that, I think a lot of it is because you're told, like, bricks and mortar, safe as houses, you own it. You got, worst case, you can actually have a roof over your head. It's actually something physical. You have all these sort of things that you believe, but when you actually look at it, like you said, you get taxed every month here for having your place, whether you're living in it or not, whether it's rented or not. You just get council tax, you get these taxes. If you buy something, you pay tax. If you sell it, you pay tax. And if for any reason the government want to come and take it, or the bank want to come and take it, pretty much they can. And that is very, very different to Bitcoin. And once you get onboarded with this, like you said, you want to own this and rent everything else. And it flips the ideas that I had previously completely on their head, as does almost everything in Bitcoin. It flips, I think, a lot of people's political opinions on their head. It teaches us that a lot of what we worry about in our everyday life was stupid, and that actually we're focusing on the wrong thing. And it's a great teacher, basically. You have to, as you take responsibility for things, slowly but surely, it shows you the real world. And the real world is a pretty fucked up place at the moment. And I'm very, very pleased that we have Bitcoin and we have so many people building such incredible software and hardware and like working together to make this new world, because it's so different to everything outside it that I think that's the addiction. Everything else feels slow and boring.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even imagine how I would feel about the world if I woke up today and there wasn't Bitcoin. In a world full of creeping authoritarianism and what I would consider like unprecedented uncertainty, Bitcoin is that shining light, and Bitcoin is that source of certainty, in that I know how many coins there are right now, and I know how many were created yesterday, and I know how many are going to be created, and how many roughly there are going to be tomorrow and the day after that, and in 100 years, and in 2140. And it just makes, the decisions you make, economic calculation, much more possible, because we live in this society in a world that, these economic choices and calculations have been made much, much more difficult for the average person, the average business, as the bureaucrats and the politicians have tried to make more and more decisions for the masses.
And they're never good. They're like, there's always more regulation, there's always less freedom, and the regulations only serve very, very few people, and it just stifles innovation. It makes people who would otherwise be entrepreneurial just think, oh, you know what, fuck this, like I can't keep up. You have to have lawyers for everything, and everything is you can't just say, I've got a good idea, this is what I'm going to do. It's like you have to go through all this paperwork and worry and stress, and then you make this whole business plan around what you've decided from what you've been told is going to happen in the future, and then one regulation changes and it's fucked, and so you never know where you stand. It's just this constant guessing game. And like you said, with Bitcoin, you know what you're in for. Like, we could all be wrong. I don't think we are, but we could all be wrong. But at least we know what we're getting. We know what the supply is. We know what we're going to have tomorrow. We know what percentage of that pie we have. And we can see the developments that are happening because it's all open source. We're seeing what is happening around us and we can make our own decisions. But everything else is just smoke and mirrors and behind closed doors. And no one knows what the fuck's going on other than the people making the rules. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I think it's more so than that. It's like, you don't know when things are going to change again. And I think that's the main driver between not only, Bitcoin and traditional bank currencies, but also other altcoins. Like, people don't realize that these other coins don't have the same level of decentralization that Bitcoin has. And, even the most, popular coins like Monero or Ethereum, like, yeah, perhaps someone could hard fork them to keep the properties they have now, but there are people at the helms that are going to push the framing of, okay, this is now the new really Monero, this is now the new real Ethereum in the form of hard forks, and change whether your money is valid or out of how many coins your slice of the pie is. That just doesn't exist on Bitcoin. We have like a robust decentralized network, and the changes that happen on our network, they happen in the form of soft forks that are backwards compatible. And in that regard, you got to think about the man in the coma who's running a Bitcoin node. If he awakes in 40 years, he might want to update his software and make sure, he's not susceptible to any vulnerabilities before doing any transactions. And you might also want to do that update to get the new address types, to get all the fancy new features. But he has some certainty that his share of the pie is going to stay the same, and he'll be good to go. Whereas these other coins, You don't know when, they change the entire paradigm of like how the issuance works, or how many total coins there are, or any of these other property, or even if like his coins are still going to be good in 40 years. Like, did he miss some sort of weird uh, like upgrade window? Like, you don't have those worries on Bitcoin. And for that reason, it's like the only coin that's really worth holding long term. I think there may be other alt currencies that have utility for smaller periods of time. Like, I know I was just shitting on Monero a couple of minutes ago, but I really do love Monero in that it does give you really private transactions. But the way it's designed, you got a trade-off in that it's not easy to audit the supply, and inflation bugs can not so easily be found unless you could recreate them. So I wouldn't recommend holding that long term. And then Ethereum is just like another can of worms. It's like really, truly alpha software. And whereas they say Bitcoin is rules without rulers, I would say Ethereum is rulers and rules that are subject to change at any given moment.
So much like the current system.
Yeah, like I don't understand. I mean, cool. Like you have all these interesting properties, and you could just create a new account and get into these new applications that people can write pretty swiftly. But like, are these people not seeing the irony that the way that their currency is issued is like not too dissimilar from how the central banks do it, and that like a committee gets together and votes on to change, like, to increase or decrease the issuance rate? Like, are we just like trying to recreate the systems that already exist, but like with some utility to have colored coins or play games, or like
with new rulers is the key, I think, there, isn't it? It's some people are here for a revolution and a change, and like real serious fucking change, which is necessary. And I think some people want to do a bit of a shuffle around, and actually they still want rulers. They just want the rulers to be themselves. And that's what a lot of this seems like to me, is like the DeFi stuff and all this kind of thing is like, it's just same old shit repackaged with new rulers. And it just doesn't interest me or like any of 21ism guys. Like we're completely Bitcoin only, because this as far as I can see, is like our last hope to actually have a world that changes, and see literally that, a revolution, like seriously take the power from the people who are taking the piss out of everyone and have done for such a long time. And it gives this power back to people if they want to take it. Like, it's not the easiest thing in the world to go and take it and, do everything yourself and take your own, have your own personal responsibility and learn about this tech and learn about how to store it and all the rest of it. But it's the most powerful thing I think almost anyone can do, is just buy some Bitcoin, hold it, and have something that you can use and no one can touch. And like, there's nothing else like that in the world. And all these altcoins are a waste of time. I think a lot of it is just a waste of time.
Like 99.999% a waste of time. Like I said, there's some fringe utility that some of them have that you might want to take advantage of for short periods of time, but nothing you would want to hold on the time frames we're talking about with Bitcoin. Like, no one is thinking, no one interested in altcoin trading is thinking about these assets in the terms of decades or their lifetimes, so the way that people are thinking about Bitcoin. And really, at the end of the day, most of these people are thinking about just using these coins to increase their US dollar holdings or their fiat currency holdings. And yeah, there are some smarter people that are looking at the trading in terms of just increasing their Bitcoin balances, but I think that's there's few and far between on that level. But as far as you were talking about revolution, in some ways, it's very difficult, and that Bitcoin is going to discipline you, and holding is not an easy thing to do. It's going to change the way you look at the world. It's going to change the way you do economic discussions. But on the other side of things, like this is like, in a lot of ways, the easiest revolution that you could have, in that it's, peaceful, and, I just sit at home and drink my coffee and my jammies, and I stack my sat, and I don't need to go put on silly hats or flags or shaman hats and storm a building and like LARP and actually pretend that I'm changing something, instead of taking action that's just going to further empower a growing authoritarian state. So in some ways it's very easy, and in some ways it's very hard. But either way, it's never been easier to really make a big change in the world and push things in a certain direction. So we're really blessed to have this thing.
We are. It's never been easier, and it's never been more realistic. I don't think we've ever, without this, we don't have a fighting chance at all to change anything, because it's easy to say, oh, the current system's fucked, and whinge about it. But it's a completely different thing to go, the current system's fucked, here's a new system, it's better, we're building it. We don't want a part of the old one. That's very different to just sitting and whinging, which is, I think, what most people do. All the virtue signaling, all the posting on Twitter about saving the planet and saving the world and this and that, and make sure everyone has food on their plate and make sure this. It's like, okay, but how?
We need to do this. We need to do this. It's like,
yeah,
okay,
who's we?
How about you do something that's actionable, that you can do at an individual level, and just encourage people and show people the way. Instead, you're trying to appeal to this monolithic entity in the form of the state to try to make changes for you. Like, that's so futile, because the people that are pulling the strings, that run things, like, they don't care about the common person. Like, how what else needs to be put in front of your face for you to come to that realization? Like, these guys are just in place to enrich what's like the modern day form of the mob,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's Bitcoin really allows you to take personal action, to really make a change, to do actionable things instead of just appeal to these monolithic entities, and to to actually make a change, and be able to interact in the form of counter economics, and opt out of the existing system in a peaceful manner. It's incredible, and there's nothing else in the world that comes even remotely close to it.
Is that what pushes you with Zeus? Is that what pushes you to create and iterate and make this stuff available? Is there something in the back of your head that's like, maybe I'll reword this. If you think about, and I do this quite often, like I think about on my deathbed or after I'm gone, I try and think, what will my kids or grandkids think of what I've done in my life? Like, will they think like I'm proud to be part of this family, like I'm proud of what they've done? Or will they just look back and go, you've wasted your fucking life in an office, you've done nothing of value, and they don't care? Do you believe that what we're doing here and what the possibilities are with Lightning and Bitcoin and these changes, do you feel that this is a worthy place to spend your time? And could you imagine anything other than this for your time? Because it's a lot of time, right?
There's a lot of time that we have on this planet, but in some regard, we're already dead. Like, we're not going to live forever. I don't really believe in these transhumanist fantasies that people have in the same regard. I think there's pretty much always going to be death. So it really comes down to what you're going to do with the remaining days you have on this earth. But let's not delude ourselves. Like, Zeus isn't going to last forever. Um, Bitcoin itself probably won't last forever either. I'm hoping that it's something that can last a good 1,000 years, God willing, even longer. But, everything comes to an end. So what it's really about is about pushing things in the direction that you want to see them going, and to, build upon what the people before us have afforded to us, and, inspiring people to take the steps today to improve their lives, right? And to be able to make the interactions that they can, and inspiring people that are going to come after you to build upon, if not your work directly, the ideas that you're espousing. So yeah, I mean, I would be remiss to not be pushing things in the direction I want to see the world going, especially in this crazy, unprecedented era. And I feel bipolar at times, thinking like, oh man, like things geopolitically, if you look at them, are like so bad right now, and they're unprecedented. And the only way things could really be worse, from the perspective that I see things, are if there's like a really active hot war between, like, all the major nations. But on the other side of things, like, I feel so empowered and positive, and I know that ultimately that human will at the end of the day, and our want to be free, and to interact freely, I know that whatever roadblock that people throw in our ways, we're going to be able to work around it, and we're going to push forward, and have those options available for people, and have the ability for people to empower themselves and walk out that door, and live their lives the way they see fit. And I'm not sure how things are going to play out entirely. I know, I'm pretty sure there's going to be people that don't choose to walk out that door. Some birds, they want to be in their cage. They don't want to go out into the world, because they've only known the world to be this certain way. But what's important at the end of the day is that you can show people the possibilities, and that the option to get out of that cage is available and there for you. And that's what's important.
That's a really nice way of wording it, actually. And so for those ones who do decide to step out of their cage, they do take the advice, they do take the possibilities that are given to them, and they step out of that cage. What do you see the outside world looking like? What do you see being possible with, the Lightning Network and Bitcoin, and the sort of the applications that are being built, and the ability for people to transact freely and in different ways than they were before, like with Sphinx, and with the possibilities with those kind of applications and all this stuff? Like, when you look out over the next few years, what do you see happening and being possible? Like, what's exciting you at the moment?
I am just amazed. Things are not going more to the left or more to the right, as I said earlier. But things are going to go more from these monolithic entities like the state to empowering the individual. And we're entering into what I see to be a new stage of human evolution, in the same way that, like, we were nomads and hunter-gatherers, and then we had the Industrial Revolution. Like this is the next stage in human evolution, in the form of the information revolution, that we've really just started getting ourselves into since, like, I would say, the 90s when the average home got dial-up internet. And the possibilities for these individuals that do decide to, as we said, step out of the cage are going to be incredible. These individuals are going to be catered to by these nation states or, different jurisdictions in brand new ways that we haven't seen before. Like I joke to my friends, like the really big Bitcoiners, like they're going to be sought after, like they're an NBA player getting a contract. Because the capital that they'll be able to bring into local jurisdictions will enable, so many more possibilities and bring so much prosperity to these jurisdictions. So what we're going to see is, what I believe we're going to see is these different countries come to terms with Bitcoin in different ways. Like the ones that really benefit from the existing system as we see it now, they're going to really fight tooth and nail to, put a taper on this thing and to try to make it go away. But you can't coordinate action like that on a global scale. And as much as people would love to do that and are pushing for that, that's just not possible in today's world with all these conflicting ideologies. So there are going to be nations and jurisdictions that become incredibly accommodating. And those who are accommodating, they're going to see their status in the world change. Like you're going to see, it's probably going to take decades, right? But the accommodating countries are going to change their status, and they're going to go from third or second world status to first world status. And the countries that decide to put the clamps down, they're going to go in the opposite direction, and they're going to go from first world free countries to, being very poor or totalitarian second and third world countries. And because of this technology, I think that the wealth disparity throughout the world, for the most part, is going to become more leveled out because, through the internet and through accepting this money, you'll be able to do these tasks from wherever you are in the world. So on that level, things are going to even out. But within countries, generally speaking, the disparity between the poor and the rich has a potential to increase even more. So there's going to be a lot of interesting, distinct challenges there. And I think that as Bitcoiners really increase their status in society, I just want them to be mindful of this and to start planning right now. Like, how are you going to be altruistic, and how are you going to try to limit this disparity between the rich and the poor? Because, we complain about, the central banks and the inequality they cause primarily through the Cantillon effect. But, we're going to have power to change things in a lot of ways. And, it's not just going to be, okay, Bitcoin is going to help level things out. Bitcoin is going to create a lot of opportunities for people to get out of their current situations. But there's still going to be people left behind because, even if you're the most well-equipped to process this new information, a lot of it is happenstance and, going through the experience of it. So I just want Bitcoiners to be forward-thinking and to really be empathetic to a lot of things that are going to happen. And I'm just grateful that we will have the ability to make those changes. But, it's not just going to be as simple as like, stack. You can stack and you'll be able to stack and dollar cost average into, your generational wealth for your family. But further action is going to be required to change the world as, we want to see it change.
Yeah. But one thing that makes me very positive about that is that if someone said to me if you could choose one group of people to be wealthy and powerful in the future, to be able to get off their arse and make changes that need to be done, even if it's hard to do it, I'd give that responsibility to Bitcoiners every fucking day of the week.
Every fucking day of the week, yeah.
It's just like, I've never seen this in any other industry. I've never met people who are not just smart. It's said all the time, we've got some of the smartest people on the planet in this space. And I really believe that. But not only that, they work fucking hard, and they're hard on themselves, and they don't just whinge, they build, and they're not arseholes, basically. Like, there's all this thing about, Bitcoiners are toxic and blah, blah, blah. I deal with toxic wankers every fucking day in my normal life. I've never had any issues with Bitcoiners, as long as you're respectful, and as long as you treat people with respect and you're not a dick yourself. They're some of the most helpful, kind people on the planet that I've ever met. And if there is going to be some change, and I think there is, I really feel positive about the way the world is going to change. It might be dark for a couple of years, but at the end, I think we win.
Yeah.
What an incredible group of people to do it with.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like people that are, by and large, mindful and, aware of the systems in play right now, but also people that are really, empathetic to other problems in the world, as far as, like warfare and, wealth inequality and, these totalitarian governments clocking down on people's rights, and what's going on in China and Hong Kong, and the issues people face in India and in Africa and Latin America. Like, these are by and large people who care very deeply about the direction that humanity is going to go in, and we have a very drastically different ideal of where we want to see things go, as opposed to what appears to be some form of transhumanist serfdom that the global elites have, indicated that they want to see the world going in, and the disdain that they have for the common people, and how they analogize people to being ants or cockroaches or rats. It's really disgusting. And I think the way that we empathize for people and we want to see them make better situations for themselves, it's like it's night and day in how we look at the world.
More freedom, more freedom, which is just the complete opposite of what we have now, and very exciting to see what possibilities that gives. And when you reflect on sort of what's happened in the last 25, 30 years, and how much the world has changed in terms of freedoms and what we can and can't do and can and can't say, and it seems to be accelerating at quite a pace. And when I do step outside of Bitcoin world and speaking to Bitcoiners, and I speak to normal people outside of it, it's quite weird. It's quite it's so different. And they are putting themselves, like you said, in these cages, and it doesn't seem like they want to get out, a lot of them. But I think that they will when they realize that there's this other opportunity, and they see more people doing that and taking control, because I still think that people just don't think that there's another option. I still think, a lot of people will whinge about governments, they'll whinge about banks, they'll have a moan about certain things that are going on. They might question, like, oh, why have I had my business shut down for a year when, in the UK, I think 400 people under the age of 60 have died from COVID, supposedly, and they're having their businesses taken away from them. A few people will question it, but at the end of the day, they just go, oh, well, you just leave it to the scientists, leave it to the experts. They know what they're doing, because they don't know that there's another option where people actually maybe do know what they're doing, and that the people who are controlling everything, maybe they know what they're doing, but it's not in the interest of the people. So, I think it would be... It's almost like it's perfect now, because if ever people are going to make that change, it will probably be around this time. Like you said, it doesn't seem like it can get, bar some huge wars, it doesn't seem like it can get much more oppressive without being sort of full on 1984. And like, do you think that this is going to wake some people up, or do you think that they're going to have to see this trend change, and it's going to have to be them following? They have to be the sheep. Like, do you know what I'm trying to get at? Like, it feels that most people I speak to within Bitcoin already have a little bit of a rebellious streak, or they've always questioned things, or they're a little bit on the outside of what most people would think. They have those contrarian views, and then they find this group and they're like, I fit in a little bit more here because like I don't elsewhere. It seems like, it's just a very different mindset.
Yeah, it feels good when you find your people in that regard. But as far as, waking people up, like the elites say, these crises, they facilitate change. And, they say that you should never let a crisis go to waste. And in the way that the elites, they push their agendas when these sort of things happen, we should be pushing for our own agendas when these things happen. And now is an incredible time to try to open people's eyes up to, the issues at hand and the possibilities that are out there. Like you said, in the form of these businesses just getting bulldozed pretty much by, the virus to some extent, but more so these draconian government policies. But, there's also great opportunity in, at least, in the United States, where we've just had the power transition from one party to another. I think that, people are, at least that are, sympathetic to the Democrats and are left-leaning, they're not going to want to exactly see, the things in the way that maybe we want to frame them. But, the people on the right might be able to, have their opinions swayed a little bit more now that they saw their guy get out of office, and things are going in a bad direction. So, you might want to direct your efforts towards those people, but at the same time, the leftists that are seeing, this power shift and, what will ultimately not be like a great change in policy. You got to bring those points up to those people and be like, okay, your guy got in, right? But, the U.S. empire is still entrenched in all these wars. And, that's going to continue to push forward. And furthermore, like the bailouts for these big institutions, they're going to continue as well. So when these events happen and these power changes happen as well, it makes for like really good opportunities to try to open people's eyes up to things as how they are, no matter how difficult they are. And I think in a lot of ways, like there are more people that are like, that get it more than ever, especially with stuff like social media and the internet, and people, for the most part, being able to have this free discourse on the internet. And, I think that's like a big reason you're seeing such a crazy clampdown on, on social media. And we going in less than 3.5 years from the Daily Stormer, like actual white supremacists being banned, to the president of the United States and his supporters, and, 70,000 plus accounts being shut down in a weekend. Part of it is controlling the discourse, and it just proves to us that this is such an incredible tool. But as I was saying, like in the same way that you could be so optimistic in that they're more like unplugged people than ever, and more like, people who get it than ever. The people that are like still in Plato's cave and looking at the shadows on the cave wall and that don't get it, like every day that goes on, it becomes increasingly more difficult to get them unplugged from the system. And we face a really interesting challenge in that regard. So like any opportunity that sort of breaks their paradigm or how they look at things, we got to try to put in front of their face and try to get them to look at things in a different perspective. This perspective that isn't painted into a finely defined box that just fits the mainstream narratives that only go to entrench the people at the top. So that's going to always be a struggle for people. But as I said, like these crises and these changes, like they make for really, really good opportunities to try to break that.
Yeah, and like you said as well, information will find a way now, with social media and with people getting so good at memeing things into reality and so good at just refining the message. And with 21ism here, we're celebrating art and music and memes and anything surrounding Bitcoin that helps come at this from a different angle, that helps show people the light. And it makes me very thankful that we have that, basically, because you will find a way to get to most people. It might take some time, but the time is now. The time is perfect, and we've got so much great content. We've got so many great artists. We've got so much just amazing technology coming out, and we'll get them. Like you say, there's going to be a few people at the bottom of that cave, and they'll probably never come out. But
yeah.
I think a lot of people will be more open to it, and it's very exciting.
So in that regard, I think Bitcoiners, when they're going on their crusades for spreading the truth, they need to be very selective in the people that they engage with. We're not going to make any process by going and arguing with these MMTers or these people who are deeply entrenched into the current system. Like, quit spending all of your time with people who are not willing to accept your argument in good faith and who are not willing to learn, because there are so many other people out there that are willing to learn what you have to say, and we're just not giving them enough love and attention. And instead of going on Twitter and fighting these people that are, as we said, are like at the bottom of the cave, they're going to stay there forever. Just tell them to have fun staying poor, whatever stupid phrase you want to tell them, and then move on.
Yeah, I love that.
Move on to people that need to hear it, and the people that we're gonna unplug from this system. So, in the same way that Bitcoin is scarce, our time is even more scarce. So, spend a little less time arguing with idiots and spend a little more time trying to educate friends, family, and people who are willing to hear this. Because, like you said, there are going to be people that are just entrenched there and that won't be able to come out of that. Or, there's just a lot more work to be done on them. Let's get the small hanging fruit. Let's get the people that just need a little bit more push. Just need to be shown a few more things to make up their mind and say, okay, it's time. Let me get a wallet. Let me get a couple sats. Let me see what this thing is all about. Let's focus on them. Stop focusing on this Amy Castor lady or Francis Coppola. This is a waste of time. These people are never going to change. Nathaniel Popper, he's never going to change his mind. Yes, I really empathize for the guy because of the New York Times policies and that saying you can't hold, the assets you report on. It's a really unfortunate situation because I think he's a bright guy overall, but because of his happenstance, his circumstances, right? He's never gonna, give Bitcoin the fair assessment that it deserves. And we got to stop trying to argue with these idiots. These are not the people that are going to help us make this revolution better. So stop wasting your time.
Yeah, and practical stuff as well. Like it's very much what I've moved across to is stop trying to bang onto the people who have gnawed you for years and years and just don't care, and spend the time helping someone, like you said, set up a wallet and actually say, look, come on, let's send a transaction between us. Use the Lightning Network. Let's send this transaction. You can see that I can send you a few sats and how slick this thing is, and now let's talk about what's going to be possible with it, and actually show them stuff that's practical rather than just, oh, we think the number's going to be this, we think it's going to be worth this because, comparing it to other assets or blah, blah, blah. Like you can talk that talk for the rest of your life and nothing changes. It will change when it changes.
Yeah.
But doing the practical stuff is really where it's at and really where you can help people help themselves.
Yeah. So in that regard, like stop bothering fucking Peter Schiff. Listen, I appreciate a lot that, especially his father did. I appreciate seeing his talks at Occupy Wall Street and debating what were essentially bad socialist economic ideas. But, we already won the Schiffs over. Like his progeny in the form of Spencer Schiff, his son, he's a Bitcoiner. So stop wasting your time. Like, we got the Schiffs already. We're good. All right? Stop arguing with them and find the next mind that you could help unplug and bring into the fold. And then, when you're doing this stuff, you got to also know your audience and you got to know like how far to push. Like if you're going to just be the annoying Bitcoin friend, like you're just going to be dismissed. They're going to be like, oh, Evan, you're fucking crazy. Just shut the fuck up about Bitcoin. Like we got it. Like you got to know your audience and you got to know how hard to push. Right. But if you chill lightly and, your friends or your colleagues or whatever, they see this price going up over time and they see like, maybe you're doing well for yourself, then maybe they'll revisit and be like, oh, okay, I see Evan, he's doing pretty well with this Bitcoin thing. He seems pretty passionate about it. Maybe I'll hit him up sometime to find out a little more. Like, you just don't be like a dick about it and be like bragging or like being incessant about it. Just be like, make yourself available to people. Like, I know the people in my life, like when they are ready to make that plunge, like they're more than happy and comfortable to come and reach out to me. But if like you're incessant about it and you're annoying, like they're just gonna like double down on being like, oh, this kid is crazy, or I hope he fails. I hope they ban this. Like you need to learn the nuance of like how to shill this thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a lot of that. Evan, you're a fucking lunatic. Shut up about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
I've had the same. I've had it so much, and then when they do come, like it's, oh yeah, I saw this thing about XRP. Should I jump in? You've been telling me to buy. And you're like, whoa, that's not what I've been telling you.
yeah. So like I'll be like really loud about Bitcoin on my social media or whatever. And I think that's great because it's helped me find like a following of people and to help get my work out there and ultimately create a lot of opportunities for myself. So like I'll never shut up on there, but like, if I'm not going to go to every family function and be like, you got to get Bitcoin. Like, no, like eventually, like, my cousins, my uncles, they'll be like, they'll come to me when they're ready or when they have questions, or maybe they'll just be observing from afar and they'll be like, oh yeah, I've been doing a little trading of it, or I've been accumulating a little bit, and that's the best feeling. Really, you're like, where it's been like a passive thing, or like when I've had like stories of like trying to explain it when I was back in college, or like maybe a couple of years later, and hearing like, oh, Evan, you remember when we were chilling with Mark? I was talking with him the other day. And when we were at that party 3 years ago, he heard what you had to say about Bitcoin and he threw some money and he bought like 3 coins or something. And you're like, damn, that's awesome. Yeah, so, like you gotta, there's a difference between speaking about it in like a normal way and being excited about it and telling people the possibilities and just being incessant. And you got to understand your audience, right? And then you got to also understand the forum in which you're talking about it.
Yeah, knowing your audience is one that I learned the hard way, because I was straight in with, this is going to topple governments, this is going to fuck up all the banks, like this is amazing, this is like cash and like going into all that, and I'm like, we're going to have like a real chance at like proper freedom, and people are just like, you're a fucking lunatic. Don't be an idiot. Like, how could you ever be without a government? Why would you want to? They're awesome. And like, it's because I'm going to the wrong people, telling them all that. Whereas if I'd have gone on about the scarcity thing to them hard enough, they'd probably have been like, oh yeah, it's okay, I'll buy that because it makes me some money. But they don't want the freedom. So you have to really be careful with that.
And that's why it's also important, like, to not like lean into it like super political angle from like a left or right angle. Like if you're a lefty, you don't be like, oh yeah, like this thing is going to like end the system of capitalism and we're gonna get rid of all the middlemen. And, there's gonna be no like ownership in that regard, and Bitcoin's gonna lead us to the abolition of money. Like, okay, that's one crazy extreme, and the other is like, oh yeah, Bitcoin is gonna lead to the abolition of all the central banks, and we're gonna live in a free society without governments whatsoever. Like don't go from it from that angle, especially if you know the way your audience leans. Like, just don't have to be a nut job and like wear your heart entirely on your sleeve like that. And it's just like everyone's different and they see value in it for different things. So like if you can and your audience, try to keep that in mind. And when you're starting and talking about it at a party or something and you don't know your audience, like, you got to talk about the things that are universal and, the liberties and empowerment it gives you, because by and large, people like to have more options and liberties, and they do like empowerment and being able to, benefit from things in a unique way. Like those things aren't universal. So like start from there. Say like you don't need permission to get an account set up. You're able to accept transactions in a matter of minutes. And, this thing has been gaining in value since its inception and has gone up from, less than a couple of cents really to, $32,000 or whatever it's at today. So like those things are more universal than saying this is going to lead to X, Y, or Z, depending on how you look at things.
Yeah, definitely. We all do our part differently.
And like a lot of people, they don't like thinking, like they're not accustomed to thinking about, okay, society, humanity, history, the way things are going. Just like try to frame it in the way that like it could help them at a personal level, because like ultimately at the end of the day, we're just all individuals.
Yeah, absolutely right. And being able to just show them, I think, is really good. That's something I've been doing more and more, just downloading a wallet, send them a few sats. Look, this is what you can do. No, like you said, no account, didn't ask anyone's permission. We've just done it. And you could be the other side of the world and I could have done that and it works. And that's enough. Yeah. That's pretty fucking awesome.
Technology and the advancement of technology is not like a left or right issue. Like, let's focus on that.
Yeah, well, that's why I love what you've done. I love when people in this space are building stuff. I love when people are making this more accessible. And like I said before, thank you for doing it. I now use it as my Lightning Wallet, suggesting it to all my friends. And most of us in 21ism are using it as well. So seriously, thanks for doing it and not just talking about Bitcoin and being the annoying Bitcoiner at a party, but actually bothering to take your time and build something. It's great, and this is what pushes the whole movement forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So in paying it forward, if anyone ever has any questions about Bitcoin, the Lightning Network, or Zeus, just feel free to hit me up. I'm on Twitter as my name, Evan Kaloudis. You can always just pop into my DMs, or you can pop into our Telegram group that we've set up. It's a whole bunch of us who were doing some workshops in New York. It's called the Bitcoin Citadel. If you go onto that Twitter profile that's linked in my bio, you'll be able to get the link there. It pops up in Telegram. feel free to come in and ask questions there. Happy to hit them up, talk to you and engage with you. And, I'm just trying to get more people engaged and interested in this thing. And then as far as Zeus goes, we've got a lot of really cool stuff in the pipeline. First and foremost, we've had this bounty out to get Tor support built into the app, and we've got that done. And this guy named Gabidi on GitHub, he's got this new library called React Native Tor, and it works phenomenally. So now you don't need to use the Orbot app to.
Oh, amazing!
So that's gone, and now on iOS, where Tor wasn't really an option, it also works as well. So you're able to connect to your node at home over the Tor network, which is a really incredible thing. And then moving forward, we're probably going to add a couple more controls to like create to choose which hops you can go through and get a little more privacy there. And we're also looking to get on the App Store proper for iOS, because currently you got to go through TestFlight. We're also looking to see if we can have another sort of light client option that isn't custodial through the form of Neutrino. So if anyone wants to help us with that, that'd be a great help. And last but not least, we're looking to give Zeus a bit of a UI UX touch up, if not a complete ground up look at things, because Zeus has a lot of challenges in that it supports all these different interfaces, and some things can be like a bit clunky and overbearing for someone who doesn't know or what's going on or setting up for the first time. So we're trying to tackle a lot of issues there. So if you want to help on that, feel free to reach out to me. We've already got some good screens and ideas, but I'm trying to build up a more comprehensive effort for that. So a lot of good stuff on the horizon for Zeus that I'm going to be pushing forward on. But the more people that we have involved in the community and taking a look at the code and helping iterate on it, the better this thing is going to be. Because, I'm helping guide the project, but at this point, it's really, other people stepping up and giving their input and their contributions that are what's going to make this thing an even better wallet than it is today. So I'm incredibly grateful for anyone who dedicates their time in that regard, and really happy to chat with whoever wants to talk about it.
That's very cool. Well, I'll link all those in the show notes and the article as well, so people can contact or get involved and help with the changes that you're looking to make. It's all very exciting. I look forward to seeing how that turns out, and great to hear that Orbot doesn't have to be used anymore. That's that's
all those releases. They're out in alpha, so just hit me up. You can get access to them on our Telegram channel, or pop on my Twitter feed. I have them linked there for the most part. And I'll send them your way as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, Evan, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's been so much fun, Max. Thank you so much for having me. It's just been great. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Nice to speak to you, mate. And hopefully we'll catch up for a beer in real meat space at some point when all this COVID shit is finished. And it'd be great to see you in person.
Hell yeah. I think it's going to be sooner than later. But let's not hold our breath. Fingers crossed.
Cool. All right. Well, take care. We'll speak soon.
Cheers.